Hello, you amazing human beings. You wonderful people who actually have seen through the matrix and figured it all out, or at least you're getting there. Thanks for being here. Here's the thing. I had planned to do the opening segment on just how it's the 6-year anniversary of the National Intelligence Report saying Russia influenced the US election, but actually inside that report, they kind of admit that they don't actually know that Russia influenced the election. Well, I'll get to that in a minute, but I was just going to do that. I was just going to be like, hey, it's been 6 years since this bullshit, and how much have we learned? And sure enough, this is what comes out today is yet more information about how Russiagate was utter and ridiculous horseshit. How much they lied to you, how little our ruling class who perpetrated this insane fraud, how little they think of your intelligence. And this, of course, comes out today. You know, they wait 6 or 7 years to get these truths out. But this comes out today on just how little or yesterday, how little this information actually, how little it actually influenced the American public. But I'm going to get to that part of it in a second. I want to start off by going back to a happier time in our lovely American country where all are free and all can do what they please, follow their passion. I'm kidding. We don't have any of that. That was just joke. It was just a joke. I'm just joshing with you. But I do want to take you back to 2017. So this is by Ray McGovern. Ray McGovern, for those of you who don't know, is a former CIA officer. He was in the CIA for what was it, like 30 years, 27 years, something like that. But he's had a change of heart. He basically realized as things went further and further down the toilet that our CIA, our government were lying to us, that they are perpetrating multiple frauds, that they are creating endless war. And so he co-founded something called Intelligence Officers for Peace. Is that it? Intelligence, something like that. Where is it? No, it doesn't have his bio up here. Hold on. Doesn't have his bio there either. Okay. Anyway, whatever it is. Intelligence Professionals for Peace or something like that. But it's got a bunch of other people in it too. Bill Benny, formerly with the NSA, John Kiriakou. They all got together, and they started doing this back during the Iraq War. However, not for peace, for sanity is what the last initial is. But and he's great. Nowadays, he's great. When he was a CIA officer, I don't know. I didn't know him then. I don't know that I could ever be friends with a CIA officer. But I got to know him a little in D.C. I haven't spoken to him in several years, but I got to know him a little in D.C. and wonderful guy. Anyway, he's talking about how this is the anniversary of the assessment blaming Russia for interfering in the 2016 election, and there's still no evidence. The banner headline atop page 1 of the New York Times print edition 6 years ago on January 7, 2017, set the tone for 2 years of Dick Cheney-like chicanery. Putin-led scheme to aid Trump, report says. This is at the top of the New York Times. And I also think I should back up and say why I feel the need to even get into, other than the article that came out yesterday, which I think this is a nice segue into. But when our media and our government and our ruling class do something like this, perpetrate a fraud of this size, and again, I am no supporter of Trump. Trump's a garbage human being. I've said that from day one. So is Joe Biden. So I just want truth. I want truth. I want us to not be lied to. I want you to not be lied to. I want you to be able to live your life without being fed endless bullshit. That is where my passion lies. It's one of my hobbies, along with, I like the juggling plates, spinning plates on the end of sticks. That's the other one. So I think that when something like this happens, and even if it's years later, the truth should still come out and it should be covered aggressively. It should be covered everywhere. It should be covered on fucking like they should cover it. And in fact, I'll get to this. I'm going to show a clip of my interview with from yesterday, maybe. I don't know where I am from yesterday with Stella Assange, Julian Assange's wife. I'm going to show a clip from that. And then she talks about how important news should be covered like they covered the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. It should be everywhere. But of course they don't. They put out this garbage, this propaganda, this bullshit, this hoax. I hate using the word hoax because I know that's what Trump called it, and anything Trump says, I'm like allergic to. So I hate calling it a hoax, but it was. It was a complete propaganda shit show. And when this stuff is revealed, even if it trickles out, it should be covered aggressively. And so that's why I think it's worth it to go back in the Wayback Machine and talk about what happened 6 and 5 years ago. And also the fact that they continue to reference this as if it was real. You can read articles today in the New York Times or Washington Post or any of others of those other mainstream media garbage sites. You can read them today, and they will give little asides where it'll be a half a sentence, and they'd go, well, after Russia, perpetrated Russiagate, or it'll just be a little throwaway that they put in there, a little virtue signaling to all of the Americans that they successfully convinced that this was a real thing. So that's all the reasons. I don't know whether you needed them or not. I thought some of you might. That's all the reasons I think this is important to go back and talk about. And again, I have an update as of yesterday. But so here's Ray McGovern, 27 years with the CIA. And he's saying, under a media drumbeat of anti-Russia hysteria, credulous Americans were led to believe that Donald Trump owed his election victory to the president of Russia, whose influence campaign, according to the Times, quoting the intelligence report, helped President-elect Trump's election chances when possible by discrediting Secretary Clinton. And of course, that sentence on its face, I don't mean Ray McGovern's sentence, but their quote from the intelligence report is laughable just in and of itself. You don't need to know all the details, some of which I'm going to get into in a minute. You don't need to know all the details to know that that's laughable, because undermining Secretary Clinton's credibility, do you think Trump needed Russia to do that? Do you think Russia had to get involved to make Hillary Clinton look like a sad, pathetic fraud? You think it needed a powerful world entity to handle that? No, of course not. People just turn on their Twitter and find out that all of Hillary Clinton's horrible shit. So Ray McGovern continues, hard evidence supporting the media and political rhetoric has been as elusive as proof of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And of course, that is the perfect analogy, because not only was this all lies, not only was it all lies cooked up by the ruling class in order to achieve their aims, which were multiple. It wasn't just to say Trump wasn't legitimately elected, which obviously was a big part of it, but it was also the ongoing drumbeat for a war with Russia, whether it be Cold War, proxy war, a economic sanctions war, any of those. So it served multiple purposes. It was not just to harm Trump. It was also to create a fear amongst Americans that our system had been captured by the evil entity, the Darth Vaders of the world. So very useful. And I like to point out, even when people cover this, they seem to not often point this out, that the ruling, and when I say ruling class, at least for this segment, I'm talking the ruling class that was opposed to Donald Trump. There is some ruling class, obviously, that supported Donald Trump, such as Sheldon Adelson, one of the richest men. I was going to say richest men alive, but he's dead. Fucking dead fuck. Sorry for the language, but, when someone that evil becomes dead, I feel like you should use that terminology. So he was supported by some of the ruling class, but most of them were behind the Hillary establishment. And it served these purposes for the ruling class. And it allowed them to keep people scared of this horrible Russian entity. So, the thing I was going to remind everybody that people don't often mention is that there was like 5 days there right after the election where Hillary Clinton's team and the rest of this small group of the ruling class were trying to decide who to blame the election loss on. And for like 5 days or a week, they blamed it on the FBI. I don't know how many of you remember this. For about a week, they said that because the FBI, because James Comey reopened the investigation into Hillary Clinton like a week or 10 days or whatever out from the election, that's why Hillary lost. Because the FBI decided to reopen their investigation on her. So they blame the FBI. But then there were enough conversations amongst them behind closed doors where they realized we can either spend the next several years going against the FBI, which is a losing game because they're too powerful and they're going to be run by a adversarial government, or we can blame it on the Russians, which no one can prove, and you won't have any of the intelligence community trying to defend that, really. So they switched like on a dime, like after a week or something. They said, oh, no, it wasn't the FBI. In fact, let's stop talking about the FBI. In fact, let's pretend James Comey is actually a hero of liberals. We'll do this big switcheroo and we'll say, oh, no, it was Russia. So anyway, people need to remember that's what happened. All right. So back to Ray McGovern. Hard evidence support. And by the way, if anybody puts super chats in, I will be addressing them towards the end of the live stream. I can't address them at the moment, but I will be addressing them later. Hard evidence supporting the media and political rhetoric has been elusive. Polite terminology by Ray McGovern. Elusive as proof of weapons of mass destruction. This time, though, an alarming increase in the possibility of war with nuclear-armed Russia. A glance at the title of the intelligence community assessment, which was not endorsed by the whole community, is titled Assessing Russian Activities and Intention in Recent U.S. Elections, would suffice to show that the widely respected and independently minded State Department Intelligence Bureau should have been included. James Clapper, then Director of National Intelligence, who put together this report, knew all too well that it was not endorsed by all of the agencies. So he evidently thought it would be better not to involve troublesome dissenters and even inform them what was afoot. So this is an important point, that he's Director of National Intelligence, which is all of the intelligence agencies. I believe there are 17. I might be off by one or something. There are 17 various groups in this community, the intelligence community. And James Clapper included a very few of them, something like 3 or 4 actually signed off on this report. And there's a great moment, I don't have the script here, where Al Franken, he was still in the Senate then, Al Franken keeps referencing, James Clapper is sitting there, keeps referencing the 17 agencies that signed off on this report that Russia did this, 17 agencies. And finally, James Clapper has to say, well, it wasn't all of them. And Al Franken doesn't quite get it at first. He says something like, oh, not all of them reviewed it or something. Clapper does. And then Al Franken goes, well, but they signed off, right? 17 agencies signed off. And Clapper's like, well, no, not all of them. So Clapper is in the position where he has to correct a senator who is thinking that this report was signed off on by all of the intelligence agencies. So Ray McGovern then later in the report, this is a long article, you're welcome to check it out at Consortium News, but later references a journalist who's basically agreeing that Russia is saying, oh, Russia rigged the election, Russia rigged Trump into office. And but even within that article, I believe it was for the New York Times, the Times, the journalist Scott Shane says, what is missing from the public report is what many Americans most eagerly anticipated. Hard evidence to back up the agency's claims that the Russian government engineered the election attack. That is a significant omission. So this is within a New York Times article that is agreeing and putting forward this propaganda. He still goes, oh yeah, fun fact. there's not actually any evidence in any of this. Fun thing to know, that there's not actually any evidence in this report. And by the way, I thought you guys would enjoy this. Ray McGovern actually stood up and confronted James Clapper in a book event about some of this. And he stands up, he says, oh, here's the name I couldn't remember earlier. Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. So VIPs. Very important people, if you will. So Ray McGovern stands up in front of James Clapper and says, my name is Ray McGovern. Thanks for this book. It's very interesting. Thanks for your book. I'm part of Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. I'd like to refer to the Russia problem, but first there's an analogy that I see here. You were in charge of imagery analysis before Iraq. So before the invasion of Iraq. Clapper says, yes. Ray McGovern says, you confess in your book to having been shocked that no weapons of mass destruction were found. And then to your credit, you admit, as you say in your book, quote, the blame is due to the intelligence officers, including me, who were so eager to help that we found what wasn't really there. James Clapper, in his book, admits to finding in the images weapons of mass destruction that weren't really there. So he admits this. And Ray McGovern rightfully says, now fast forward 2 years, your superiors were hell-bent on finding ways to blame Trump's victory on Russians. Do you think that your efforts were guilty of the same sin here? Do you think that you found a lot of things that weren't really there? Because that's what our conclusion is. By our, he means, Ray McGovern means all of these veteran intelligence professionals. That's what our conclusion is, especially from the technical end. There was no hacking of the DNC. It was leaked from internally, and you know that because you talked to the NSA. I'm going to get to a refresher on what Ray McGovern's talking about there in a second. But James Clapper very caught, not only caught in his own lies, but caught admitting to the lies he did to help us go in, invade Iraq, kill roughly 1 million people. Over the course of the past 20 years, our wars on terror have killed 6 million people and displaced at minimum 38 million people. So James Clapper helped do all of that. So good guy, 6 million dead, 38 million displaced, having their lives destroyed or upended. Good guy. So he's caught. And so I'm not going to read his response because it's honestly a bunch of fucking it doesn't say anything. He says, well, I've talked with the NSA a lot. I also know we briefed the then President-elect Trump. In my mind, I spent a lot of time in signal intelligence business. The forensic evidence was overwhelming of what the Russians had done. And it's a bunch of fucking gobbledygook, but he's basically saying oh no, I'm pretty sure Russia did this thing. And then they have a bit of a back and forth. But what Ray McGovern was referencing, and some of you may remember this, there are basically two main tent poles, two main pillars to the Russiagate hoax, the Russiagate garbage that has fallen apart at every last turn. Every day, even after 6 years, we're still learning new ways this shit has fallen apart. There are two main pillars. Sure, there was some little stuff about, Manafort talked to a Ukrainian guy once, or Trump had a meeting with a Russian guy once. There was some of that shit. But there were two main pillars of the Russiagate is real idea. One was the emails and internal information from the DNC that showed real corruption. Let's not forget that. They were all proven real. There was nothing wrong with them. There was nothing faked. It was all real corruption inside the DNC. It showed a ton of shit. It showed that Citibank picked Obama's cabinet. It showed that Hillary Clinton had ins at CNN who were giving her debate questions before the debate. It just showed so much corruption on so many different levels. accusing Bernie, internal agreement to accuse Bernie Sanders of things like being pro-Russian, or I think they even though Bernie Sanders is technically Jewish, I think they were going to accuse him of anti-Semitism. All this trash. Real corruption revealed, right? Now, the pillar of Russiagate is that this was hacked by Russia, by Russian government, and given to WikiLeaks. They hacked into the DNC computers, they got the data, and they gave it to WikiLeaks. And that is how we got all of that real corruption information. But actually, after much investigation, much analysis, in intense analysis of how WikiLeaks got the information, etc., the Veterans Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, again, this is Bill Benny, former one of the heads of the NSA, Ray McGovern, who was the CIA briefer of multiple presidents, John Kiriakou, all these guys, they came to the conclusion, and you could read article after article on their proof of it, that it was not a hack. The information could not be exfiltrated, was not exfiltrated from the DNC's systems. It was a leak, meaning someone stuck a thumb drive, someone inside the DNC stuck a thumb drive into a computer, got the information, and delivered it, like physically, to someone at WikiLeaks or someone who could bring it to WikiLeaks. Nothing to do with Russia, because no one at the DNC has been proven to have been a Russian intelligence asset. So whoever it was who used that thumb drive was not a Russian. And that is how the data went there. And not only were they able to, the VIPS, Raymond Governor, whatever, and others were able to prove this via information, via data transmission rates, things like that. But on top of that, the only organization that ever got to see the DNC computers, the DNC servers, to prove any of this, was a DNC-funded outlet, private corporation called CrowdStrike. The FBI, which investigated it, was never given access to the DNC servers. And Donna Brazile, the former head of the DNC, said they destroyed the servers. They obliterated them. They just destroyed them, burned them, whatever. Why would you do that? Why would you burn the scene of a crime if you were trying to get the FBI to investigate it? You wouldn't. But so I actually have here the actual quote from the head of CrowdStrike. This is a DNC-funded outfit, which was the only ones to ever assess that it was leaked from inside the DNC. Meaning, it was hacked by Russians. The CrowdStrike, his name is Sean Henry. He's the president of CrowdStrike. He was brought in front of Congress, and as Aaron Mate noted in the transcript here, this is the actual transcript from Congress. Sean Henry said, now exfiltrate is the nerdy word for data being removed, being stolen via hack. So was data exfiltrated? Was it taken out of the computers via a hack? Mr. Henry said there's not evidence that they were actually exfiltrated. There's circumstantial evidence, meaning they don't actually have any evidence that a hack was done of these computers and that data was taken out. Then the congressman says, okay. Sean Henry says, but no evidence that they were actually exfiltrated. He again says this. See, now he's worried, whereas up till now, they had been willing to lie and say, oh yeah, Russia did it. He's brought in front of Congress, and he's worried that if he lies there, he could get himself in trouble. So now legally, he's actually telling the truth. And of course, most of this is never reported by our media, which again shows how little our media gives a shit about the reality. It shows how little they think of you, how little they care whether you and I have the truth, have the reality. They are serving the ruling class. They are serving the status quo, the U.S. empire. That is their job. And if they go against that, they will not have that job for long. And there are career killing fields. There are massive massive piles of careers that have been destroyed by, I mean, not as many as you think, because people generally go where the bread's buttered, but of careers that have been ruined by turning against the lies of the U.S. empire and revealing the truth. I see someone in the comments mention Katie Halper, friend of mine who just lost her show at the Hill for revealing or talking about Israel being an apartheid state. That's just one example. But of course, I myself have lost most of my career due to this Russiagate hoax, this Russiagate propaganda. Now, it's one of the many reasons, that YouTube banned my main channel around the world and banned over 2,000 videos. It's one of the reasons, but really it has to do with just going against the lies of the U.S. empire in a multitude of ways. And also my podcast has been deleted by Spotify. By the way, quick note here. These live streams between me and you, our hangouts, our weekly hangouts, are going to be a podcast again. They were a podcast called Moment of Clarity. That stopped being updated in November just because everything was getting too much for me to handle it all. But I'm going to continue or begin again updating that podcast. So it's called Moment of Clarity. It's been banned by Spotify, so it's not on Spotify, but you can get it on Libsyn. You can get it on other podcast platforms like Stitcher and Apple Podcasts. So it is still plenty of places. So if you are the type of person that you could watch videos every once in a while, you can throw on the live stream every once in a while, but you're also into podcasts because you can play them in your car, etc., these live streams will go back to being also a podcast called Moment of Clarity. Look it up. Look it up sometime. Give it a good review. Whatever the fuck. All right. So that's the Ray McGovern portion of this. Talking about 6 years since that national intelligence assessment that shows that we are not that they were only able to get 3 agencies to sign up on it. There wasn't hardly any information in there. There was no proof. Even the New York Times had revealed that. But let's get to the update from just the other day. And by the way, later in this live stream, as I said, I'm going to show a clip from my interview with Stella Assange, Julian Assange's wife, about updates in that case, whether Assange could get his freedom, etc. I'm also going to get into I'm going to show you the new most censored news about weapons contractors reading fairy tales to children. I'm not kidding. Anyway, I got a lot coming up. But all right, so this is from The Intercept. Intercept, good on some things, shitty on others. But in this case, they're doing one of their rare good jobs. So they titled it, "Those Russian Twitter bots didn't do shit in 2016, says new study." Oh, I actually, this speaks to the second. Someone just wrote, what was the second pillar? This is the second pillar. The first pillar is it was a Russian hack, which is not true. It was a leak. The second pillar is that the online trolls, both on Facebook, Twitter, etc., Russian trolls were able to manipulate so many Americans into voting for Trump. And this has followed that theory, that idea that Russian trolls, Russian online bots, all this shit were able to manipulate Americans, or even had some sort of large campaign, has all been refuted, debunked at every step. And this article is from yesterday. This is not old information. There is, quote unquote, no evidence Russian Twitter bots had any meaningful effect pushing voters to Donald Trump in the 2016 election. Since 2016 presidential election, the notion that the Russian government somehow weaponized social media to push voters to Donald Trump has been widely taken as a gospel in liberal circles. A groundbreaking recent new NYU study, New York University study, however, says there's no evidence Russian tweets had any meaningful effect at all. Quote, "We demonstrate first that exposure to Russian disinformation accounts was heavily concentrated. Only 1% of users accounted for 70% of exposures." So if there was any Russian disinformation, it was hitting 1% of Twitter's users, or most of it was. The scholars wrote. Here's another quote. Second, exposure was concentrated among users who strongly already identified as Republicans. Meaning, if you're pushing people to Trump, you're going to try and push people who aren't already voting for Trump. But most of this information coming on Twitter was hitting 1% of users, and they were already Republicans. Third, exposure to the Russian influence campaign was eclipsed by content from domestic news media and politicians. Finally, we find no evidence of any meaningful relationship between exposure to Russian foreign influence campaign and changes in attitudes, polarization, or voting behavior. Basically, almost nothing was done. If something was done, it was hitting very few people who were already Republicans, and there is no evidence that it drove just about anyone to vote differently in the election. Trump won because Hillary Clinton was and is a fucking corrupt, disgusting human being, and Trump was able to tell his own lies in order to make people believe that he was not a similar corrupt, disgusting human being. Now, of course, he is, but he succeeded in getting people to believe that he was not. The research conducted by NYU's Center for Social Media and Politics is a rare counter to what's become the prevailing media narrative. Yeah, like I said, they reference this like it's just a given. Oh, Russia influenced the election. Yeah, Russia did that. Russian bots did that. Prevailing media narrative that social platforms like Twitter were and will continue to be wielded by malicious foreign actors to interfere with American political outcomes. Most importantly, according to the study, based on a longitudinal survey of roughly 1,500 Americans and an analysis of their Twitter timelines, the relationship between the number of posts from Russian foreign influence accounts that users are exposed to and voting for Donald Trump is near zero. So here's another thing I want to, because the one thing I was skeptical of, I think this is important information and everyone should have it, but the one thing I was skeptical of is they seem to just be assuming that there was a large Russian foreign influence effort, that Russia's government, and in fact, those who really seem to understand Russia better say that Russia didn't seem to be pulling for either side because they hated a lot about Hillary Clinton, but they also disliked Donald Trump and viewed him as a con man as well. So they didn't have a strong preference. The oligarchy in Russia. And by the way, if you look up oligarchy, they pretend it's just for Russians. No, we have an oligarchy, folks, and we are ruled by an oligarchic class here in America. But anyway, so they talk about the Russian foreign influence accounts. Now, I don't know what exactly they're referring to, but are there Russians that try and influence people or talk about U.S. elections in some way? Certainly. Just like I talk about elections all around the world as well. Does that make me an American influence account? So I don't know that they actually, that even this study, which I'm saying this study seems largely accurate, but I don't know that even this study proved that these quote unquote Russian foreign influence accounts were connected to the Russian government. I'm not saying they couldn't be. I know nothing about the Russian government in that regard. I don't know whether they created a bunch of people to go influence Americans, but I'll say that this has given no proof that these Russian influence accounts are connected to the Russian government. I just think that should come with a caveat is all I'm saying. And then here's a little bit of Intercept's propaganda, because the Intercept can never do a wholly legitimate job. The Russian intelligence agencies attempted to influence the 2016 election, broadly speaking, is by now well documented. And I was like, wait, it's been well documented that the Russian government actually tried to influence the elections? And I was like, I haven't seen that evidence. So like, what are they talking about? So I then clicked on the hyperlink to the word well documented. And it goes to this article, which one of the authors is Ryan Grimm, a known hack. But anyway, besides that, it says top secret NSA report details Russian hacking effort days before 2016 election. And so, and this is the one that I believe Reality Winner, who I've interviewed not long ago, but she leaked from the NSA, and then the Intercept immediately got her caught, immediately got her arrested. So the Intercept has gotten multiple people, multiple whistleblowers arrested. But so this is the internal NSA report saying Russian military intelligence executed a cyber attack on U.S. voting software suppliers. And then you read a little more, and it says, while the document provides a rare window into NSA's understanding of the mechanics of Russian hacking, it does not show the underlying raw intelligence on which the analysis is based. So yet again, there is zero evidence other than the NSA said so. Now, what is the NSA? Well, it's like very similar to the CIA or the FBI. They lie to Americans when they feel like it, when they find it useful. They maybe don't lie to Americans as much as the CIA does, but I would never take the NSA at their word. The entity whose main job is to surveil Americans, is to surveil you and me and keep us in check because we aren't allowed to live free lives, free of government intrusion and free of freedom to have privacy. We can't have that. The NSA is in charge of making sure we don't have that. And the Intercept here is just trusting the NSA at their word. Well, NSA says Russia was doing something, so can't argue with that. Yeah, you can. You fucking really can. So, yet again, the article which I think is largely reporting the truth, the one from yesterday, says, oh, but it's been widely accepted that Russian intelligence was trying to hack U.S. elections. And I go, oh, really? Is it widely accepted? Well, you know what else is widely accepted? The other bullshit that you're debunking in this article. The idea that Russia had bots that were nefarious and getting us at every corner. So widely accepted means nothing. So you better link to some real solid shit if you're going to say something's widely accepted. And then you click on it. It links to their own article saying, we trust the NSA. Whatever the NSA says, absolutely true. Fucking bullshit. All right. So I just want to give one more aspect of this whole, and I had no idea this would take 40 minutes, but I want to give one more aspect. Like I said, clip from Stella Assange coming up in a moment, as well as the new Most Censored News episode. And I might even have more for you if I have the time. But so we got the two pillars, right? We got the pillar of Russia is the one that gave the true corruption emails to WikiLeaks, which is not true. It was leaked, not hacked. Could have been leaked by Seth Rich, who was assassinated in the streets of D.C., not far from where I live. Or maybe it was someone else. I don't actually know that for certain. But whoever it was, someone leaked. And by the way, Julian Assange, I will say, gave a very cryptic interview. This is before he was in prison. So he gave this interview from the Ecuadorian embassy where he addressed the idea that Seth Rich had been the leak to WikiLeaks. And he was very cagey on it. And no one supports Julian Assange more than I do. But I think there's a possibility. He said, look, I can't comment on whether Seth Rich was the source for these emails, but I will say that those who leak to us, we will never expose their identities, and they never have exposed anyone's identity. And Chelsea Manning was caught, unfortunately, because Chelsea Manning told someone else that she had been the leaker. It was not WikiLeaks. It was not Julian Assange that got her caught. And so his point was WikiLeaks' policy of never acknowledging that someone was their leaker. And most of the time, they don't even know unless the leaker contacts them or hands them a thumb drive or something like that. That's how WikiLeaks is supposed to work, that even WikiLeaks doesn't know where the information came from. So he said, I can't comment on whether Seth Rich is the source of this. But I will say that the people who leak to us take great risks sometimes to give important information. And that was what he left it as. And at the time, I found it very frustrating. I mean, I guess I still find it frustrating today. But I will say that if someone were a leaker to WikiLeaks and he knew it, he still couldn't reveal it because that was and is their policy. So Kim.com, on the other hand, another well-known internet figure, has said that he has evidence that Seth Rich was the leaker. But I don't know. I'm not going to come down either way on that. But I will come down on this. It was a leak from the inside, meaning it was not a Russian. So that's pillar number one. Pillar number two is these bots on Twitter and Facebook. The Twitter pillar, the bot pillar, the Facebook ad pillar collapses under that article on The Intercept I just read you, but it also had collapsed a long time ago because the head of advertising at Facebook had said within the days after it came out, had said that the ads coming from this Russian clickbait farm, 57% were after the election. Most of the ones, if you looked at them, you wouldn't find them pushing you one way or the other on the election. On top of that, there's no evidence that this Russian clickbait farm actually had any connection to the Russian government. So it's a Russian clickbait farm, just like we have American clickbait farms. If you walked into an American clickbait farm, meaning it is a entity whose sole purpose is to get people to click on things, to sell ads to them, and they don't care what they click on, so they just put all kinds of shit on the internet, hoping it'll get clicked on. They don't give a fuck whether the content's good, bad, whether it does anything, doesn't matter, just trying to get ads in people's faces. If you walked into that office in America, in the United States, you walked in, would you go, I bet this is connected to the U.S. government? And someone was like, why you say that? These people are just showing, photos of someone trimming their nails on an ad. And for some reason that gets people to click on it. I don't know why. It always seems like every ad is just like someone digging into their fingernails or whatever. Why would you say it's connected to the U.S. government? Well, because it's an American clickbait farm. It's in America. We're in Minnesota right now. Well, yeah, but there's tons of shit in America. I had to make it an American government operation. Oh, no. Everything done in the United States is an American government operation. And if someone said that to you, you'd go, oh, wow, you're a fucking moron. I get it now. Okay, you're a fucking moron. Well, that's what they're doing with this Russian clickbait farm. They said, it's a Russian clickbait farm that didn't influence the election at all, but we're going to pretend they did, and it's Russian government. And they had no way to prove these people were connected to the Russian government. So then Mueller goes on and indicts something like 14 of these people at this clickbait farm in St. Petersburg that had no influence on the election, that was posting stuff on Facebook. Many people don't know that quietly, months later, Mueller and the Justice Department dropped the charges against the Russians indicted in the Mueller probe, because they didn't actually have any evidence showing that this clickbait farm, A, influenced the election, and B, was connected to the Russian government. But most people don't know that. Most people, I have a very intelligent family member, I won't say who is like a fucking high-level guy in an organization, like a fucking, he knows his shit, all right? Smart dude. Smarter than me in some ways. And yet, he goes, yeah, Lee, the Russians influenced the election. 14 indictments under the Mueller probe. And I'm like, all dropped because they didn't fucking have anything. They just brought the indictments because they thought it would look like it would create the stir of, oh, they've found proof. No, they don't. Also, there's the fact that other people have said you could indict the Justice Department can indict a ham sandwich. Getting an indictment means nothing. It's proving the actual charges, but that's a side note. All right. Let's move on to this clip from, and I'm sorry I got to do this now, but I actually have to go to just rumble.com/Lee Camp. Again, free to watch there. So I'm not holding anything back from you. I'm going to show this clip from Stella Assange, Julian Assange's wife, but go to rumble.com/Lee Camp. Free to watch there. Here, I'll even provide you the clip to the actual episode. And by the way, if you're over there, if you're at rumble.com/Lee Camp, please click the thumbs up. It actually does make a difference. Click the thumbs up, click the follow button. It actually does make a difference in the algorithm and all that shit. So don't just lurk. It's the least you can do. Click the goddamn thumbs up. Jesus. But so head over there, and I'm gonna show the clip from my interview with Stella Assange. And by the way, she has changed her name. It was Stella Morris. Now they're married, Stella Assange. And I'm also going to address at least a few comments in a moment. And I'm going to play the latest episode of Most Censored News. So, a lot coming up. Addressing your comments, Stella Assange, all that stuff. That's at rumble.com/Lee Camp. And also, if you become a member at leecamp.net, I would really appreciate that. If you become a member, I think the lowest level is $6 a month, so $1.50 a week. Really, not much. But I appreciate every person that becomes a member. So become a member over there. You get tons of exclusive content. You get a Q&A where I just do nothing but respond to comments and topics you want to cover. That's on Fridays, every Friday. You also get exclusive videos. You get exclusive articles. You get you also get a copy of my book, Bullet Points and Punchlines, the digital version. So become a member at leecamp.net. Loads of good shit over there. All right. Let's see. So rest of this is at Rumble. Just give me a moment and we will continue.